How to strategically respond against violence through the help of women's shelter in Tampa. According to the study of National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, they have found out that there are approximately 9 million both men and women are abused, either pushed, or shoved away by their intimate partner annually. Manipulative relationship may also know as domestic violence, which greatly affects an individual's physical condition and intellectual health, finances, employment, housing, and relationships with own circle of relatives and friends. It might also bring about death. Because domestic violence shelters cope with those results and offer safety, they may be a crucial avenue for sufferers searching for relief. According to the National Network to End Domestic Violence, NINV 2011, 37,519 sufferers of abuse had been living in domestic violence shelters in the United States in a single day in 2010, with every other 5,686 sufferers being grouped to emerge as away due to workforce and funding shortages. An extra 33,129 adults and children received non-residential assistance, which includes counseling, legal offerings, and help groups. Because the offerings supplied via way of means of shelters are essential for lots sufferers, it's far crucial that those applications offer powerful assistance. Now, let us explore the ways on how to strategically respond against domestic violence in any women's shelter available within your reach. 1. Ensure applicable legal guidelines and rules offer help for shelters and associated offerings. Legalities on whatever concerns we wanted to act upon must be grounded by policies. In terms of shelter provision, it is necessary to look into consideration their legal requirements upon enrolling to their program. In order to be knowledgeable on what is right and wrong to keep away with the issues and other misconduct behavior within the residences you have temporarily or permanently reside with. Survivors from any violence should have an applicable legal guideline and rules on how to rescue them legally and help them live an abusive life with restoration. Women's shelters are considered indispensable services for women and children fleeing domestic violence. Violence against women is not arbitrary violence, but a specific form of violence that affects women and girls disproportionately. A comprehensive legislation should be comprehensive and multidisciplinary, criminalize all forms of violence against women and cover issues of prevention, protection, empowerment and support, health, economic, social, psychological, of survivors, as well as adequate punishment of survivors and availability of resources for the survivors. Protect all women without discrimination based on race, skin color, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, marital status, sexual orientation, HIV/AIDS status, migrant or refugee status, age or disability, and recognizes that women's experiences of violence are determined by factors such as race, skin color, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, wealth, marital status, sexual orientation, HIV/AIDS status, migrant or refugee status, age or disability, and may include specific measures for specific groups of women. Be gender sensitive. A gender-sensitive approach to violence against women legislation recognizes that women and men have different experiences of violence and that violence against women is an expression of historically unequal power relations between men and women and discrimination against women. Wherein there are conflicts among normal and or non-secular regulation and the formal justice system, the problem must be resolved with recognize for the human rights of the survivor and according with gender equality standards, and the processing of a case beneath normal and or non-secular regulation does now no longer avert it from being introduced earlier than the formal justice system. Provide for the modification and or elimination of provisions contained in different regions of regulation, including own circle of relatives and divorce regulation, assets regulation, housing policies and regulations, social protection regulation, and employment regulation that contradict the regulation adopted, in an effort to make sure a regular criminal framework that promotes women's human rights and gender equality, and the removal of violence towards women. Developing a preferred responsibility on government to offer a good enough finances for the implementation of the applicable sports, and or requesting the allocation of investment for a selected activity, for example, the advent of a specialized prosecutor's office, and/or allocating a selected finance to non-governmental businesses for a targeted variety of sports associated prior to the implementation. The designation or strengthening of specialized police devices and specialized prosecutor devices on violence in opposition to women, and offer good enough investment for his or her work and specialized education in their staff, and that complainants/survivors need to have the choice of speaking with woman cops or prosecutors. Legislation is maximum possibly to be applied successfully while observed via way of means of a complete coverage framework which incorporates a country-wide motion plan or strategy. 2. Promote principles to help standardized implementation of rules. Without the promulgation of regulations, protocols, suggestions and standards, regulation will now no longer be carried out comprehensively and the schooling of officers will now no longer produce powerful results. Here are some principles to effectively design and implementation of rules. Adopt a human rights primarily based, totally technique activities geared toward finishing violence in opposition to girls ought to be designed and carried out with the information that girls and women have same human rights and that violence towards girls is a contravention of those human rights. Apply a gender evaluation aimed toward finishing violence towards girls need to understand that gender inequality is the foundation motive of violence towards girls and mission and alternate the ideals, attitudes and behaviors that permit it to continue. Use a survivor-targeted method aimed toward finishing violence towards girls need to speak with survivors of violence and do not forget the reviews of girls and women for the duration of the undertaking cycle. Follow moral pointers. Ethics are the morals and values that decide how human beings pick the suitable movement to take. Projects aimed toward finishing violence towards girls need to observe moral standards that recognize and shield girls' rights to safety, dignity and privacy. Be culturally conscious. Cultural and spiritual ideals could have a large say over the manner people and corporations behave. Programs aimed toward finishing violence towards girls. The use of a human rights primarily based totally method need to intention to mission and alternate cultural ideals and practices that violate the human rights of girls and women. Adapt to special conditions. Aimed toward finishing violence in opposition to ladies have to be tailored to the state of affairs or network wherein the violence is happening. Specific techniques have to be evolved to deal with special sorts of violence and the particular stories of the ladies who are experiencing it. Be inclusive. Aimed toward finishing violence in opposition to ladies have to pick out and deal with the unique desires of various groups of ladies, consisting of individuals who can be extra vulnerable to violence. Operate within an ecological version. Aimed toward finishing violence in opposition to ladies have to be knowledgeable with the aid of using the ecological version, and is the reason how a selection of things on the individual, family, network and societal degrees can growth or lower a woman's threat of experiencing violence. More data approximately the ecological version may be observed on web page. Work in partnership. Programs aimed toward finishing violence in opposition to ladies have to contain partnerships among special stakeholders, together with government, civil society, network and religion primarily based totally organizations, educational and studies institutions. Draw on current proof. Programs aimed toward finishing violence in opposition to ladies have to be primarily based totally on proof and don't forget current studies on what has labored and what has now no longer labored in the past. 3. Secure good enough investment for shelters and associated offerings. Provide specialized shelters for responding to home and sexual violence, trafficking, and dangerous practices, which include pressured marriage, woman genital mutilation and honor crimes, amongst different types of violence. Integrate practices that promote accessibility for all girls, which include making sure centers serve girls of every age and might accommodate ladies if wished, sheltering girls with children, lowering economic barriers, via way of means of offering unfastened offerings and secure transportation, and developing infrastructure and rules which permit girls dwelling with disabilities, in humanitarian settings, undocumented or immigrant girls, and people with intellectual fitness or substance troubles to get admission to shelter. Survivors of home violence should have particular safety, confidentiality, and trauma-associated desires that have to be addressed through survivor-targeted housing. The offerings provided through home violence unique housing packages range and might encompass short and long-time period housing, condominium help offerings, and aid offerings that works to satisfy survivors' person desires. 4. Develop modern tactics to offering opportunity lodging in low-aid or remote communities. These opportunities, which include volunteer secure houses, emergency secure spaces consisting of network centers or hotels, and personal lodging. Affordable housing really varies from country to country, hence, it is difficult to establish a universal standard for the affordability of its constituents. The perception of affordability, it isn't best approximately being capable of come up with the money for to shop for or lease a residence, however additionally being capable of come up with the money for to stay in it. This is going past assembly fees associated with operations and maintenance. It additionally entails concern of transport, infrastructure and services. If a residence is reasonably priced sufficient to shop for and run, however positioned some distance from livelihood possibilities or facilities which include schools, it can't be stated to be affordable. The motives for a loss of affordability range from downtown to downtown, however generally consist of housing charges growing quicker than incomes, deliver of homes now no longer maintaining up with demand, shortage of land, and demographic modifications which includes populous growth, getting older and modifications in family composition. 5. Explore the feasibility of sanctuary schemes to permit girls to live of their houses or speedy rehousing to provide girls instantaneously solid and secure housing options. Recent tendencies in countering homelessness because of home violence have come about inside the context of a much wider power toward a greater proactive, interventionist awareness on stopping homelessness. All neighborhood government had been endorsed to increase interventions designed to allow families vulnerable to home violence, wherein suitable and applicable to the household, to live of their very own homes. These interventions are typically regarded as sanctuary schemes. Sanctuary schemes are multi-agency, sufferer-concentrated projects designed to allow families vulnerable to home violence to stay adequately of their very own lodging and decrease repeat victimization via the supply of superior safety features and support, in which it targets their preference and in which the wrongdoer does now no longer stay in the lodging. A sanctuary is an asset in which safety features had been set up so as that families susceptible to home violence are capable of stay adequately of their personal lodging in the event that they pick out to do so. A sanctuary can also encompass a sanctuary room, if chance evaluation indicates that is the precise option. A sanctuary room is created with the aid of changing a door to a prime room, regularly the bedroom, with a strong center door. The sanctuary room door is reversed to open outwards, the body is bolstered and extra locks and bolts and a door viewer are fitted. This affords a secure room from in which family contributors can name and wait adequately for the police. 6. Improve girls' protection and safety with measures. Protection and your safety is the top priority, which include working in a personal area with help from protection guards or police. Accomplishing disaster intervention as wished on arrival and at any time. Making sure availability of an unfastened 24-hour assist line with skilled counselors, and facilitating chance evaluation and protection making plans. Numerous international locations have recounted that extra secure housing is wanted at some stage in instances of quarantine. Safe lodging lets in survivors and accompanying minors to briefly get away abusers. Although a laudable decision, it makes making sure the protection of survivors, who stay at domestic a task for the reason that perpetrators understand in which to attain them and might have get admission to the domestic. 7. Empower girls to regain manipulate of their lives and obtain their dreams through counseling, help businesses and case-making plans. The Emergency Safe Haven gives help via counseling, intervention, aid companies and help with children. After all, dwelling in a safe haven for a protracted time frame isn't exceedingly desirable personal communication. Legal advocacy, which includes prison problems or protective orders, is enabled via the unique immigration team. The emergency refuge is an essential service, for offering on-the-spot and direct safety to the sufferers and survivors. Its exclusive region lets in for the transient resident's privacy, further to being a secure place. The citizens on the safe haven are supplied with many offerings and supports, which vary from physical, emotional, and social. Physical offerings, which include accommodations and website online offerings, are supplied, clinical help, and precautionary safety measures. Counseling and therapy, in addition to felony advocacy and education, instructional classes concerning awareness and employment possibilities include important guide and education programs. Economic possibilities via way of means of the organization, consisting of economic backing of commercial enterprise ventures, allow citizens to begin corporations in their personal, all pointing/referring back to the empowerment model. One of the predominant dreams of the empowerment program is to make the lady economically strong after reintegration into society. This is to make certain that they can thrive on their personal with the applicable and critical income-producing competencies and trainings. 8. Strengthen person advocacy and system huge coordinated network responses. Women who had been involved approximately home violence or had been themselves sufferers of home violence got here collectively and determined that one of the maximum essential problems dealing with sufferers became the absence of opportunity housing. Many of those early agencies started through housing ladies and advocates' personal houses for 1 or days. Safe house networks preserve to this day, and are a feasible opportunity to brief housing while organizing a refuge isn't feasible. Shelters having a philanthropic method frequently grew out of moves to cope with poverty and homelessness, and are centered on offering people with the primary requirements of food, safe haven and clothing. Shelters with an extra-bureaucratic method replicate civil carrier agencies and are centered on coordinating the diverse groups that supply offerings to battered girls. Shelters with a healing method are extra carefully tied to an intellectual fitness version and recognition on offering battered girls with remedy and counseling. Shelters with an activist method take a broader view of the trouble of home violence and is involved now no longer best with the physical and emotional desires of character battered girls, however additionally with the societal systems that permit the continuation of spouse abuse. In general, the refuge has discovered that girls do what they are able to satisfy the price of staying on the refuge. Women's advocates additionally sought contributions from neighborhood welfare agencies, however negotiated with the neighborhood authorities to make certain that girls have been now no longer later penalized for those bills from the authorities to the refuge. 9. Assist girls and ladies to get admission to financial possibilities and low-priced housing. Financial assistance to women survivors from violence should be accessible at any point of time because the after-effects of the tragic events caused to them could not wait longer. Working together not only to end homelessness but also to end the violence that they could also afford to leave what struggles them to break the cycle of violence. The need for secure and less costly housing is one of the maximum crucial and instantaneously issues for survivors of violence and abuse. Black people, indigenous people, and different persons of color are overrepresented in homeless populations because of structural racism, ancient measures, community impoverishment, and different racial disparities throughout systems. The program availability should assist also flexible financial assistance, obtain the secure housing as well its affordability. 10. Provide outreach offerings and awareness elevating in the network. Community attention and training are a paramount prevention technique. It may be used as a planned technique in retaining ladies out of abusive relationships, in addition to teaching. Preventive training programs, as achieved for the duration of numerous groups, are visible as powerful techniques in making more youthful generations aware about this reality, most usually beginning in center colleges to attain more youthful people earlier than they attain the age wherein home turns into greater prevalent. Partnerships with different groups or people permit for higher and wider ranges of service. A collaboration of ability units makes it less difficult to efficaciously overcome and deal with needs due to the fact exceptional groups can also additionally deal with exceptional goal areas. However, a safe haven or corporation does now no longer most effective should accomplish with different groups that deal with the equal problem. In fact, encouraging assist and movement from wonderful network businesses or establishments is to be encouraged. We hope then you have discovered again a new information worth sharing for